Craftsman here, and this is probably the last video of this miter saw station update. And basically this one's going to cover the dust collection hood that I made, and then a little bit of the organization for the short cutoffs from the miter saw station. As far as coming up with a design, and I'll bring the camera in closer here shortly, but as far as coming up for a design for a dust collection hood, there's one thing that I had taken into consideration that I didn't consider earlier in the build, and that was more so because I was trying to keep this table as short as possible. I kind of wish I would have made this, had this section here made about 6 inches wider. Now 6 inches is quite a bit, but the reason I say that is if I would have made it 6 inches wider, I could have made this hood assembly deeper and still had room for the miter saw arm to clear. Now, this still works very effectively, but it probably been a little bit more effective had I made this wider. The other reason that I kind of wish I'd made it a little bit wider, probably in 2016 here, we're going to be looking at getting a Bosch Axial Glide miter saw. I'm not sure if it's going to be the 10 or 12 yet. 10 would be nice because I use a 10-inch blade. I'm not really sure as far as which miter saw we're going to look at. It'll be a Bosch for sure. I've done a lot of research and been finding that there's a lot of really good reviews on Bosch for the actual set-in-place application. Bosch has some weight behind it, which a lot of contractors don't like, and I fully understand why, because when you're lugging stuff around you want it lighter. But the nice thing I like about the Bosch is it's got some weight to it. And weight equals stability because there's less vibration, it's just more solid. That's why if you've taken the wood shop tour here, a lot of the heavy duty equipment, or I call it heavy duty, a lot of the equipment I have is, you know, some of the older stuff where it's got some real cast iron weight into it yet. So I'm a firm believer that weight adds to better control and better performance. So this is something that we've been looking at for a while. I know of a couple people that have the Bosch AccuGlide. I think they're the 10-inch series, and they swear by them. So one of them had used a Milwaukee prior to that, and somebody else had used the Makita. I think it was the same model as this one here. This saw still performs really well, but it's not as true as what it once was. I've gone through and I've tuned it up a little bit, but it's definitely starting to show some of its wear. And we've had it in the shop here for the last almost 12 years. So it's not a saw that gets used really hard on an 8-hour day production basis, but still something that has some hours on it. And the cost of the saws have come down quite a bit as far as the Bosch saws. I think we're going to take a really good look at the Bosch system. So the disadvantage to that is, well, I should say the disadvantage, one of the issues I'm going to run into is that this is pretty tight here. It will fit. I actually did measure one of the saws recently. I saw on display. But it's one of them things that if I would have planned a little bit more in advance, I would have made this drop-down section about 6 inches wider, and more so to accommodate the larger dust hood. But as I'll show you here soon, that this dust extraction is actually quite effective, and what makes it effective is I've actually created a velocity down at the bottom, which is really good. So those of you who don't know much about dust collection systems, when the shop was built and actually moved in here, we actually did spiral ductwork, and we got it from Oneida Air. And Oneida was really good in working with us as far as setting up the main trunk line and all the branches off of that. And the one thing that they stressed was, and I could be wrong on my numbers, but for some reason I want to say that they wanted 3,500 feet per minute in the main trunk and 4,000 on the branch. And the reason you want 4,000 on the branch is because obviously a lot of branches have drops and you need the velocity to be able to pick the material up. I took that same theory in my mind, and when I designed this dust collection hood for the miter saw, I was thinking all about velocity again. So once I bring the camera closer, you'll be able to see as far as what I'm talking about. The other thing to touch base on real briefly was the storage for the short cutoffs. I've got this thing 7/8 full, and I still don't have all my carts with scrap or short stock emptied yet. Originally I was planning on keeping this here for cutoffs from the panel saw, but I might actually end up putting shelves in here as well as an afterthought, just because I do accumulate a fair amount of cutoffs, and we don't like to throw a lot of stuff away here, especially if it's, you know, 9 inches or longer. It's one of them things that when I emptied this, I threw some stuff out already, but as I started putting it away again, I started weeding through a little bit more. I probably threw out about another 10-15%, but at the same time, a lot of this short stuff has value for door parts, face frame parts, things like that. So it's one of them things that, as a woodworker, a lot of you who kind of do the same thing, it's all about, you know, saving the scrap that's usable. And at the same time, for me, it's like, what's usable, but what should I really be throwing? So, alright, I'm going to bring the camera a little bit closer and show you the dust collection hood. And I'll actually cut a little bit of, make a few passes on the miter saw, and you can actually see the dust being pulled away. Okay, one of the things that I kept in mind when building this dust hood for the miter saw was, a lot of you know that these ports that they put on the miter saw, they just don't really collect a lot of dust. Now, surprisingly, I actually saw when making some cuts of, just in looking at my past videos and when I was testing this hood layout, there actually is a good amount of dust that comes out here, but it's probably about 40% maybe, and there's just some other stuff that just kind of floats out the backside of the saw. And part of the reason is because there's nothing here on the backside to catch anything from the teeth up until here. Like I said, I was surprised. It was actually a good amount of dust that came out there, but still not quite as effective. The idea behind this baffle is, I don't know how well you can see this, but I've got a taper here. It's about a 45 degree. It goes from 8 inches down to 1 inch. And this piece of sheet metal here, there's a couple pieces of wood behind here to keep it from getting sucked tight to the wall. But there's a lot of velocity here, which creates a lot of turbulence right where the suction starts. And this is very, very effective. The only part that's not totally effective is when I'm doing a miter. And that's why I have this plastic here, which was a thought that didn't turn out as good as I wanted it to. But this is actually plastic for making a strip door. And for the most part, it probably adds a little bit to it, but it's not. It didn't turn out the way I kind of wanted it to, so I might revisit that. But overall, with the dust collector running, this really has a lot of velocity right down here. Now you might be wondering, well, how did you come up with that number? Basically, it was trial and error. I knew that if I had the gap too wide, I wouldn't have the velocity. And I knew if I had it too low, I would also be not having enough velocity. So it was a little bit of trial and error. So basically, I just did 1 inch off the floor and 1 inch off the back. And it actually works really well. The old dust collection hood on the old miter saw stand was similar. It was just something I kind of knocked out of wood in a hurry, and you can see it had been modified on the fly. So I wanted something that looked a little bit better. Still looks a little bit rough, and more so, I didn't figure one thing correctly, which was the pipe for the dust collection. And but it still works. It works out very well, and I'll show you here very shortly. But so yeah, right behind here, this is actually screwed to the wall. And there's on the sides here, it's about 1 inch wide, and it goes to 1 inch, and it widens out to 8 inches at a 45. And then there's just a lot of turbulence in here that just sucks the dust right away. The dust will shoot on here, it'll fall down, just get sucked up immediately. Even fine cutoffs, just a little sliver, if it makes it past the saw, it'll hit down here and it'll go up the dust collectors. So the old one did that too, but the old hood was something I built on the fly as well, and it wasn't quite as effective, more so because I had too much of a gap on the bottom. Other than that, it works really, really well. And like if I would have done this, to redo this, I would have the center section 6 inches wider, and then make this deeper, make the sides deeper, so it kind of surrounds the miter saw a little bit. But I didn't want to try to build around the different heights here, just for the simple reason that if we go to a new miter saw here, this is completely adjustable, and I don't have to mess with, you know, the sides of the dust hood. So this, like I said, it actually works out really well. So I'll start the dust collector up and I'll position the camera on the other side so you can actually see the sawdust actually just fly right into the dust collection hood. Oh, and one other thing I want to point out, you might say I didn't make it deep enough because I'm actually touching the back panel here, but the back panel has got a little bit of a bow in it and that'll get sucked tight. So I did, there's probably about a total of a 1/2 inch clearance, and I knew that going in. Alright. So as you can see here, it just let loose again. Like I said, there's a little bit of a bow here. When I made this here, I didn't take one thing into consideration. I knew there was going to be flex here. Those of you who have central heating and air conditioning, if you look at your ductwork, a lot of your ductwork looks to be like a cross in it or a crisscross. And basically what that is, it's a slight bend that's done in the manufacturing process of the parts that kind of keep this from being so flimsy. This is only 26 gauge sheet metal, which is really all I needed, but at the same time I didn't put the crisscross in there. And with that being said, there is a lot of velocity here. I'm not even sure if that would have done the job, so I just added a couple wooden blocks here, so I've got some even spaces around there, and actually it works really well. So alright guys, that concludes the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I apologize if you guys want to see a build and all this, but I just really couldn't justify the time of setting up a camera because I was trying to get this done on a weekend, and I got majority of it done on a weekend, but the following weekend I actually was able to do this because I was out of town for several days, so I couldn't really do anything with it. But this is just something I talked about in an earlier video, how I wanted to redo this miter saw station. And I've got the station done, but sometime in the future, more than likely, when we replace the saw, we're going to do a new miter saw fence as well. And that one's going to be kind of a knockoff of the J. Dowley glide stop. And I'm going to take the same principle, and I'm going to modify it so I can still have a flip stop. So having a flip stop in your miter saw station is just, it's huge. It's just it's a time saver or a labor saver, however you want to say it. Just for the simple reason, if you have this set up for a specific length and you need to make a different cut, you can raise this up. The nice thing about the J. Dowley is there's indexes on the back side, so you can slide it to some presets that you set up according to your common sizes. You might do a lot of cutoffs. We do a lot of 30-inch cutoffs for cabinet-based styles. And then there's also some other common ones. 27 and 5/8 is another common one for 30-inch upper door styles. So it's one of them things that, you know, this has worked very, very well for us for the last It's been probably 16 years that we've had this, and it's been tremendously good to us. Even when it was set up flimsy, it did the job. Now we'll actually have something that's more solid, something that doesn't need to be readjusted as often, or hopefully very rarely compared to the way it was set up, and cuts more true and accurate. Okay, with that being said, that concludes the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and questions and positive comments are welcome. Thanks for watching.